All right, it says we're live.
Does it say we're live?
Yeah.
Well, hello, everybody. I hope we are live. Let me just check this out. Give me a second, Lisa. Let's see if we are live. This is exciting. This is my first live in such a while, so I'm very excited. Want to welcome everybody to Destination Health Podcast, Finding Function in a Dysfunctional World. We had a great podcast a couple of weeks or so ago, week and a half ago, with Lisa, and we're going to go live today. So if you have any questions during the podcast, put them in the comment section down below, and we will make sure that we answer them. So this is going to be exciting. If I'm looking down, I'm just trying to share it to your page, which is not letting me do. So, okay, we're okay. We're going to have to share it afterwards. So Lisa, welcome back to the program. Lisa is the owner of Freedom Kitchen, and we were discussing about food, and we were discussing about how the kitchen is going to bring about freedom, henceforth Freedom Kitchen. I love this. And I think it's important because we have become a society where fast foods and so forth have really become predominant in our lives. And, you know, they're fast foods, they're processed foods, they have a lot of omega-6 fatty acids, they have starts the inflammatory cascade, just means that there's inflammation, can lead to different disease processes, can lead to leaky gut. And I will tell everybody that, 3 or 4 years ago, I was reading an article in the Mayo Clinic Proceedings, big journal, and it was talking about food, and it was talking about how these ultra processed foods have permeated our society, and how they're readily available, they're highly affordable, and they're highly palatable. So all of these bulls that are out there, you like that, don't you, Lisa? All of these bulls that are out there, it's easy. And, my son orders food, they bring it right to the doorstep. They leave it off. They send you a text or whatever that is. I forgot what it's called. And I'm like, no. So he needs to learn how to cook. He does know how to cook, and he knows how to cook certain things. So he can get the grass-fed burgers, and he can go out on the grill, or he can do them in the house. He can make himself, different types of dishes. He's 14 years old, and this is very important. And we left off last time, Lisa, in the Cult Jam. We left off last time where we were talking about kids and raising smarter kids. Let's pick up from there. What does that got to do with the Freedom Kitchen? Raising smarter kids. Seriously, man, what are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's probably the most empowering thing that we can do is to teach our kids about food. We've become too disconnected, and our kids are too disconnected from their sustenance. And to reconnect them to their source of sustenance, to food, reconnects them to nature. And it reconnects them to something much greater. It connects them to the divine. So, without getting too woo-woo about it, on a very practical level, just getting our hands in the pot, in the clay, cooking our food helps us to become more creative. And now I come out of corporate America, so I can tell you that what's lacking in corporate America is creativity and critical thinking.
Oh my goodness.
So now I've taken that to the kitchen to say, this is where it starts. The heart of the home is where creativity and critical thinking begin. And just by teaching our kids to cook, which is probably, I don't want to say just, because for many people, they would think just teaching my kids to cook will help them get a better job. Yes, it will. Yes, because they'll have better
Hold on one
health.
second. I figured out how to put it onto your timeline, just to let you know. So it's on your timeline too. So rock and roll.
Good. rock and roll. You
All right, I'm not, I may look a little different, but I just use my critical thinking. So anyway, go ahead. I like this because
so
I'm going to interject in a little bit, but you're the
yeah,
guest, so you can talk as much as you want.
well, I absolutely love talking to you. I mean, we were talking even before we went live, and
Yes.
I mean, you and I could just talk about so much. So, and thank you for always making me smile and making me laugh.
I have a tendency to be, I've been called the CFO of every company that I work in. I'm the chief fund officer. So
Oh, see, I like that because
you like that?
I don't have a chief fund officer.
Now you do.
Yeah, and I've been really hard at work at getting my fall curriculum done, recorded, video editing, cookbook written, and so I really
Awesome.
needed this today.
Awesome. But
Um,
I definitely agree with you. What happens is that if these children can figure out and they can use their frontal cortex, for those of you listening, that's right here, that's your executive decision-making skills, that's your stuff that you use to make decisions. And if they can make decisions on how to cook and eat properly, not burn themselves, all of that, not burn down the house, it sets them on a path. It's a course set in motion where they can think critically and make good decisions about their food. You're making better decisions in your life regardless of what's going on, correct?
yes, yes, and I probably have here. So I am studying right now Dr. Joan Iflin's textbook called Processed Food Addiction. I'm in her program. The research in here is pretty profound that, so you understand this, that when our body is in stress, fight or flight, we go back into survival mode, limbic brain. We're not able to use that executive function and critically think. And what the research studies show is that processed food alone puts a stress on the body and puts us into survival mode and into the limbic brain. So there we are in fight or flight because our body feels like it's being attacked from the chemicals in the food. So we don't even have to have an external, well, I guess that is an external stressor, but once we ingest it, it becomes an internal stressor.
Right.
But I'm not even talking about like the deadline at work or the traffic jam or, the fight that you just had with your spouse. Like, I'm not talking about that kind of external stressor. We're talking about food becomes a stressor that puts us into fight or flight and then makes us release cortisol, but puts us into the limbic brain, which just sort of blew my mind because I have witnessed as a health coach that when we get people off of processed foods, the veil lifts and they can suddenly think more clearly. The brain fog lifts, and that brain fog is caused by this. But what I didn't really understand was that they're literally in survival mode, fight or flight from eating processed foods.
All you had to do was call me and I would have given you the answer, Lisa. So this is important for all of the parents and all of their children that are listening in right now. Eating the appropriate foods. Definitely. I mean, let's, break it down into simple terms. You eat something that you're not supposed to eat. You go out for a fast food burger, you have a sugary soda, you have some pomme de frites, you have some French fries that are, deep in some type of veggie oil, which just isn't good. And then you go to the local store and you get we used to call them candy stores back in my day in the cities. And you get some more sugary drinks, because it's made from the best stuff on earth. And then you get some, cakes or candies or something like that. That was living. But that just weighs them down. That just spikes insulin. Then you're crashing, you're tired, you don't feel well. You're wondering why your kids have no energy. You're wondering why your kids' behavior are just not appropriate at times in school, at home. And then you give them more stuff. You give them boxed, mac and cheese, because that's what everybody did. right? And that's what a lot of people do, but that's not good for you. That's not good for you. It's not good for your children, right?
I think it's easy for us to assume or say, if it's sold in the grocery store, it can't possibly be that bad for us. I mean, they wouldn't sell chemicals, they wouldn't sell something toxic. And, I've spent a lot of time contemplating the conversations that I've had, which started with the conversations I had with myself, because I raised my kids on fast food and junk food because
We all did back in those days, right?
right, because I, was working a corporate career. And now, I've worked with a lot of clients, and I see the shame and the guilt for I couldn't possibly have done something that bad. So we have to downplay how bad the food has gotten to make ourselves feel better, because we truly, our psyche can't handle the amount of guilt and shame of what we've allowed to happen, not just with our own kids, but with all kids. Like, we allowed the food to become chemical soup and we haven't stopped it.
Mhm.
And so when I hear those types of comments, I put them in the same category as everything in moderation. I think people use that statement too. It's a pat answer in
Mhm.
order to feel okay about a choice or a decision they made, or to make someone else feel okay. Well,
Yeah,
everything
I
in
understand.
moderation.
It makes the parent feel a little bit better. It's like, oh, he had a slice of pizza or she had a slice of pizza or something like that. But then my son at this point in time, when he does this, and he's 14, and when he does have a slice of pizza, he had two slices last night. We were at a meet and greet for his high school. And listen, everybody's having a nice time. He had a couple of, he just says, I'm tired, because all of that stuff that's in there. And, people always ask me, Lisa, too, why am I so strict with my patients? And I say, listen, you know, you come to me with type 2 diabetes, if you come to me with cardiovascular, maybe a post heart attack, there may not be so much room for error, right? When it comes to that, everybody says the 80-20 rule. And, sometimes you have to educate people more. And maybe I do that. I don't like doing that. I like to make those positive lifestyle changes, and then we do add in something after an elimination diet, and they say, well, I really feel bad. I'm like, oh, I got you now. So let's go. And I do that always within the first 4 to 6 weeks, so that it's a situation where we've learned a lesson, and then they can use their prefrontal cortex to make those decisions. I'm out to dinner. I got a little wine here, and I'm not going to have the processed macaroni, but I'm going to have, waiter, is it wild caught salmon, or is it, is it this, is it that, so you start thinking critically, right?
Yep. That's why an elimination protocol is really the only way to go, because one, we can't discern or know what is best for every single person, but they really need to come to that realization on their own, which is why I absolutely love coaching people through an elimination protocol or a detox protocol, because as soon as they feel it in their body. I had a client, she just kept saying, I just can't give up my skinny pop. And I said, well, it's just for a month. It has to go this month. And she said, but it's only 35 calories. I said, I don't care about the calories. We're doing an elimination protocol. Just get rid of it. You can add it back later. And she called me when she added it back, and she said, oh my God, all of my health issues returned. Her digestive issues, her lower back pain, from her 35 calorie skinny pop. If I would have told her, get rid of the skinny pop, she would have just rebelled. She would have looked for research that said popcorn's good for her and it's only 35 calories. And I could have never known for sure that that was causing, her digestive distress.
Right.
So ultimately, it's the only way. So anyone listening, if you're trying to figure out what foods work for you, the only way to discern that is an elimination protocol, so you can figure it out. And you have the tools then to go back and do that again, because our bodies are always changing, but the food is changing, Dr. Dan. And this is what scares me. Okay, so this is why I'm on a mission to educate more people, because our food continues to degrade.
Evolve, right? It's evolving. It's evolving, and it may
Yes.
not be evolving for the best, right?
Yeah, did you say evolve or devolve? Because I think it's devolving.
Yeah, I get that. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, teaching our kids now what has nutrients in it, which the nutrients are, they're just not as nutrient dense as what they used to be, because we
Mhm.
need the microbes in the soil.
Mhm.
And the research on soil. So I started studying the bees about 10 or 15 years ago, and they said, oh, we only have like 50 to 60 years left on this
Mhm.
planet with the current bee population dying at the rate that it's dying. And we won't be able to grow food without bees.
Right. Mm.
And so what I don't think most people understand is that the number one killer of the honeybees are lawns. It's
Really?
lawns.
Tell me. Educate me. Tell
Yes,
me.
because lawns provide no food for them whatsoever. So they have to go long distances because everyone put in these lawns with less landscaping. So they have to go longer distances to get food and to return home.
Mhm.
And then the weed and feed that we put on our lawns.
Mhm.
So one of the things that you can do for bees is you can put in a pollinator garden, and you can put in bee condos. In a bee condo, like, just take wood and drill little holes in it, and
Right.
they'll go rest, because lawns are exhausting for them. They have to
Yeah.
fly so far.
Yeah.
So we, like the middle class with our postage stamp lawns, are the
Yeah.
biggest killer of the honeybees. So we want to blame big agra because of all the glyphosate and all the chemicals, but we are actually the biggest killers from
Mhm.
what I've heard in the classes I've taken. And
Mhm.
then the agricultural chemicals would be the second largest killer of the honeybees. So we have honeybee populations that are dying. We truck them out to California. They put them on semi trucks, and not every hive makes it,
Mhm.
to try to keep enough bees out there to populate like the almond trees and stuff. And
Right.
so, we're really in a dire place when it comes to our pollinators. And then the work of Dr. Zach Bush aligns with that as well, saying when they've studied soil. So he was is a doctor who, like me, really as a health coach, and like you, I kept going back to, like, what is the root cause? Instead of helping people reverse their ailments, how do I get to the root cause? What is the root cause? And what Dr. Zach Bush found is, like, in the beginning, he could, have someone do a juice cleanse that was
Mhm.
pretty profound, but then he had, over time, he's getting less and less results, because this is how we know that we have less nutrients in our food.
Right.
He went back to the food, but he started looking at the soil and the microbes in the soil.
Mhm.
We need all those bugs in the soil that the agricultural chemicals are killing. And because we don't have living soil, our food is dead.
Yeah,
And
it's not absorbing those nutrients. That's just general biology 101. When it comes to this, for all of our listeners, if I grow tomato plants, which I do in the backyard, which I do, you know, over the years it's gotten less and less. Not because I'm less of a green thumb, it's just that, the soil is being depleted of its nutrients with what we're putting on there. So those plants are just not absorbing everything, right? I live in a semi-rural, quasi-rural community, and there's a farm. If I look out the window, there's the farm, and they have a bee farm. They have exactly what you said, by the way. They have this thingy, this wood, and all the bees go there.
yeah,
I run by it, and nobody says no. The bees don't bother me. They're just doing their thing. I'm not going to knock it over, though, Lisa.
don't don't do that.
I'm
The
not going to
honeybees,
knock it over. I'm looking at my son when we're riding bikes by it. I think he wants to kick it. No, don't do that, buddy.
the honeybees won't bother you anyways. They're
Yeah.
not very aggressive.
Well,
But
I don't know. They may get mad at my son and say, "Oh, we're doing we're making honey here. What's going on?" And
right, don't
they come
disturb us.
out and they're like, "It's that Cardalicchio kid again. Let's get him for a little bit," and they get stung.
Well, Dr. Zach Bush's work aligns with the work that I had learned from the greening of Detroit when I was taking the classes on bees. And that is, with soil, we have 50 to 60 years left of crops, of harvests on this planet. And this kind of blows my mind, Dr. Dan, that this is not a conversation that's happening in general or in mainstream.
Mhm.
When I talk to people about this, like there are multiple data points that show we have 50 to 60 years, like less than 60 years. So I have kids coming into my cooking classes that are 6. So this means there will be no food harvested in the way that we harvest food today.
Mhm.
There will be no food harvested by the time their child is 66.
Mhm.
Now, that's probably the wrong demographic for us to be talking to because they're pretty busy raising a 6-year-old.
Yeah.
That's where I think it falls on us because our kids are now older. We're older and wiser, right? And where
You
we
know, a
get to
friend
bring
of
that.
mine said that, a friend of mine said to me, and he's an entrepreneur, and he'll say to me that, you know, entrepreneurship will solve all the problems of the world. And I do agree with that up to a certain point, you know, and I think that we start in the homes, no matter what age they are, and start teaching them. We could be the conduit initially to teach moms and dads that have 5 and 6 years old. You know, that's why we're doing this podcast in part, right? So that they can listen, they can understand what's going on when it comes to this, which I think is extremely important, extremely
Yeah,
important. Because those children are going to have to use their prefrontal cortexes and make decisions, you know, good decisions at some point in time also, right?
which is exactly why they have to start eating real food now. So,
You know what? Somebody said to me on a podcast, they weren't debating me. They were actually like poking me a little bit, you know, real food, real food, real food. What's real food? You know, and I said, I don't know. I said, let's think about this. So if you were to drink a sugary soda or you're going to have a cakey thingy, is that real food? Is that something that you put in? And one of there was a panel of 6 of us, and one of them was a, you know, athlete. They're older, they're in their 50s, but they're very competitive in sports. I said, I don't know. You come home from working out at the gym, and that's your refueling situation. And why would it be for a kid? You know, so what does that mean, real food? You know, so if you go out, if you have freedom, like we're here talking about the Freedom Kitchen, and if you are, you know, in a country like America where you have freedom, and if you have freedom to buy organic apples or organic blueberries or whatever that is, you know, wild caught salmon, if that's what you want to do, that's what you should do. I think it's better than anything else from the research I've read, from my clinical experience doing this for over 30 years, right, Lisa? So I think that you should have that freedom to go out and purchase that if that's what you want to do. You know, I remember in the 70s, it changed because everything became box food, right? And I was the typical latchkey kid. I would come home, you know, and I would have to have something to eat because I'm going to practice, right? I'm going to go play football practice, baseball practice, basketball practice, whatever that was. And so, you know, I come home from, you know, 8th grade and you eat. And so it was easy because there was a box or there was something you put into the microwave, right, Lisa?
yeah.
And you just ate it, you know, because it was fast and it was quick. You know, Salisbury, I think I've eaten so much Salisbury steak. I'm like half Salisbury steak these days from the 70s. You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? I can't even look at that stuff anymore. It makes me queasy. It's not real food. It's not real food. You know, the chemicals, you can tell me about pathways that the chemicals, your body's going to take care of them. But if you overload your body, it's not so good. So I'm going to add in my 30 years plus of clinical experience and research that I've read. So that's okay.
Yeah. Well, and you know what we want the kids to know is they do have a choice. They do have free will.
Mhm.
But no one's having the conversation with them about what is in their food. I actually saw a post, I think very highly of kids eat in color.
Mhm.
And I saw a post that said the topic of all the chemicals in the food is just a little too heavy for kids. And
Mhm.
I don't think so. I think we bake a cake, and we talk about the ingredients we put in there, and we talk about all the ingredients that we don't need in there. Now, here's the difference. You guys could buy this at the store. I'm not telling you you can't. You live in America. You've got free will. You can go get a box cake mix, but here's all the ingredients we didn't put in our cake.
Right. Listen, in my house, Lisa, during the, oh geez, do I want to say during the 60s? Then I'm really old, but okay, during the 60s, right? And when my great grandmother was making homemade macaroni or homemade whatever it was, she was, they were into teaching the culture, if you will. So we would sit there and we would be with them, and we would, I'm 8, 9, 10 years old during, wow, I'm really old. Anyway, we would help them out, and it was different then. Even into the early 70s, they were teaching us. We were going into, high school at that point in time, and they were teaching us how to cook, and it was actually interesting to see how to make homemade this and homemade that. And this is what we did in our land before they came here, and all of that. We found that really fascinating and interesting. So we knew about the ingredients, to be honest with you, Lisa. We were, both the males, the females, my cousins and stuff like that. We were all surrounding somebody on a Sunday morning or Friday when they were making homemade pizza. It was a lot different than it is now, where they're using corn oil as opposed to olive oil or any other types of ingredients that they did. And they would always say, this is good, this is healthy, this is better for you, this is what we did back in the old country. Lisa.
Yeah, right. There's a maxim in equity that says what is similar is not the same. What is similar is not the same. That is a really big concept, a really deep concept that I would ask everyone to contemplate, because what we're buying today for vegetable oils or canola oil is not the same as what you used from the old country. It's not the cold pressed olive oil that we were used to. It's high heat rancid rapeseed oil. And yet people have it in their mind it's the same thing.
Yes.
What is similar is not the same.
Right.
Us taking cream and churning it, and turning it into ice cream is not the same thing as what they sell in the grocery store today that has 4 forms of sugar, which always includes some form of corn syrup, which has been genetically modified. And if you look up maize, corn, there's a catalog of genetic modifications. It's had 152 genetic modifications to it. And most of those are chemical additives for some type of pesticide or herbicide right in the seed. So then you take 152 genetic modifications and then you turn that into corn syrup. And then you put that into it is not the same thing. What is similar is not the same.
Right.
And so this is where we've gone kind of blind to, well, my grandma made pasta, but the pasta today is not the same thing.
Right. And we had, I mean, they made homemade wine. They had grapes. They had gardens of Mazanigal, all of that stuff like that. Remember Mazanigal? They had all of that stuff, and the fig trees, everything. That was the way that they ate back then. It would, even with this little plot of land, there was a dozen different types of veggies that were being grown that they would, put into a salad or whatever that was that they were making. So it definitely was different. I like that. Say, what was that? What is?
It's a maxim in equity, and it's what is similar is not the same.
What is similar is not the same. That's going into the show notes, just to let you know.
Yeah,
I'm going to attribute it to you.
Well,
Lisa, she said, what is similar is not the same. That's it. I'm giving it to you.
Yeah, so we could compare olive oil, like a cold pressed olive oil, to this rancid rapeseed oil that people seem to think it's no different. But all around us, and we probably talked about this in the last interview that we did, how we have all been dumbed down and we really were compartmentalized. And that was done intentionally so that no one could see the big picture.
Right.
So very much you're put into, this is your responsibility and you don't get to know what's happening over in this department. And so you can see this, just look at your bank and your DMV and or Secretary of State, and you'll see how we've all become very compartmentalized and really dumbed down. And so this maxim inequity actually shows up all over the place.
Yeah.
If we look back in history, we actually had a post office, not a postal service. Are they the same thing? Our dollar sign used to have 2 lines through it that connected at the bottom. And now it has 1 line through it. What changed? Is it the same? Because what is similar is not the same.
Sure.
And it's all of these things that I look at and say, we really need to get our critical thinking ability back. What has limited our critical thinking ability and our creativity? And Arianna Huffington said, a culture of burnout can never be a culture of creativity. We're in a culture of burnout.
Yeah.
And we're burning out our kids.
Life is complicated. Life is fast. I live a very fast lifestyle, but I make sure that my food and my day has things where, have breaks and so forth. So, because now you're stressed, like you said before, because now you have emotional stress besides food stress. And that just adds into it, because when you have emotional stress, insulin, cortisol is going up and down and all of that. Now you just want something to set it straight. And that's when you reach for that cup of coffee at 3 o'clock or that crumb cake, because that's what I used to eat at 3 o'clock. Just that every day, Lisa. And it was delicious, but it wasn't nutritious at all. So now I have, snacks, and I have things that are, nutritious and delicious. And at the age of 60, I feel like I'm 30 years old right now. I don't know if I want to live forever, but, I want to live healthy. My mother just passed away at the age of 82. And, what was interesting, Lisa, I'm going to say this on the air, I think for the first time, is that, she had very good doctors and so forth. They wanted her to change her diet. Lisa, she's 82 years old, been in this country for X amount of years and all of that, decades, half a century plus. She's 82. Now they want her to change her eating habits. You know how that worked out? Didn't work out at all. Should have gotten her 20 to 30 years ago, where she could change her eating habits. So when I saw her for the last time, she wasn't eating. I said to my sisters, this is it. Her body's breaking down. She's not eating. This is what happens. And then from there, when I was with her, we were all with her for the last day or so. She wanted to eat because I was there, because I was trying to get her to eat, right? Oh boy, she had 2/4 teaspoonfuls of stuff. And I said, Ma, you don't have to do it. And then, you had that look. I'm done, I'm making my peace. I'm talking to the man upstairs type of a situation. She had that look on. Then they brought in pie. Lisa, her face lit up. Her body language, oh, because they went away from that eating appropriately to this. And I will tell you, it's indelibly, it's ingrained in my brain, that look that her eyes lit up, her body, her face, her eyes, her personality, her emotional, just lit up, and I'm like, just to the end, she had maybe, she had more pie than she had the food, Lisa, so we should have gotten her many, many decades ago, because listen, if your number's up at 85, I hope that you're healthy and you're not, struggling, you're not in pain, you're not taking 50 different medications. Because my mother come up from North Carolina, she'd have she'd have her medication bag. Ma, how many medications are you taking? They were giving her an appetite stimulant at one point in time during all of this. And I'm like, oh my God, what's going on here? What are we doing? And so should have gotten her 30 years ago.
I will say though, listen, as long as it was like real fruit and that pie could have been made healthy. And this is what I teach the kids. You don't have to live without pie. You don't have to live without cake, but take personal responsibility to learn how to make it and make it healthy. And let's cut the sugar way down.
Right, like you were saying last time, like a lemon meringue pie looks yellow, lemony, right? But they put the food dye into it, right? So why don't we just keep it the normal color yellow? Who cares about that stuff? Salmon, farm raised, they make it look really good because they put the dye in it and it looks appetizing for some reason to people. For me, I just walk in and I go, there's the wild caught. I'm not looking at the color. I'm not looking at the color of the lemon meringue pie. Pistachio ice cream, now that I'm thinking about it, we were talking about last time, it's white.
Yes.
It's not green.
Right.
My grandfather would buy pistachio ice cream because Italians, they like it. They like pistachio ice cream,
I
right?
love
They love it. It was white. I said, Gramps, they said, it's white. It's not pistachio. He goes, what are you talking about? He was confused. I said, it's green. He said, he's not green. So he's arguing with me. He goes, here, have a bowl. I think they may have made it too.
I've made it.
Yeah, and so I think he made it, and it was great. It was, I'm like, Graham, I'm on my third bowl. Can I have another bowl? I thought you didn't like the color, grandson.
Those are the types of lessons I teach the kids. See, if we just keep it simple, then we don't have to fear food. And, I'm not going to say that we can't have a whole life of pie. The kids need other nutrients. So clearly I'm going to tell them, they need to have other things. But as we're aging, I have read that our taste buds will definitely prefer the sweet stuff. So I remember both of my grandmas, that's all they wanted to eat were sweets in their last few years. That was it. Seemed like nothing else tasted good to them, or they didn't want anything else. But then I would
Celadora cookies and all that because it was Italian.
Then I would just say, fine, as long as it's made healthy.
Right. Making it from scratch the old-fashioned way is always
what is similar is not the same. So
I am attributing this to you, by the way, in the show notes. It's going to say Lisa right next. That's what it's going to say, Lisa. I'm telling the company to do that. Lisa, we're attributing it to you. We're going to put it in quotations.
Because us making a lemon meringue pie or a peach pie and not adding anything artificial, no processed corn syrup, not 3 forms of sugar. I've made things with the kids and we don't even add sweetener. And I say, now I wanted you to try it without sweetener at all. See if you can, acquire the taste for this. And then if you want to add a little bit of honey or maple syrup or coconut sugar next time, okay. But always if you're taking a recipe from someplace else, always start by cutting the sugar in half.
Yeah. And you know what? I remember my grandmother, my mother's mother, Sunday night, of course, you had your dinner around 2-ish. Yeah. For us, we had our dinner at halftime for the Giants. You ate, then you went back to the game. So it was strategically, somebody got up in the morning to start making the homemade stuff, right? The gravy, the sauce, whatever you want to call it. And then from there, at night we would have a sandwich, and then my grandmother would put fruit, because Italians have like fruit after, she got into this thing where she would put in strawberries and blueberries and melon and watermelon. Then she would put sugar in it, and I remember we started eating this, it went from just making a fruit medley to to this sugary type thing. And we all had headaches and drinking a ton of water, which nobody drinks water anymore. You're just drinking a ton of water. And we got hooked on that stuff because at one point in time, we just kept on going back for bowl after bowl. And they were saying, oh, this is great. This is, it's fruit. It's good. They should be eating it. Next thing you know it, you gain 5 pounds when you're 15, 16 years old. And it's not the best when you're athletic, and you don't know which way to go. What are you cutting out? You just worked out more and you lost the weight that way, so it's interesting.
Yeah.
Sugar, cut the sugar, because you know what? A friend of mine, Debbie, said watermelon's great in the summertime. It's got a lot of nutrients and stuff. It's high glycemic index. It is, but you don't have to put sugar in it. It's already, there's no reason to make it more palatable, if you will, right? There's no reason to make it more
So
palatable.
the food companies did that because they knew that we would buy more. And so what I explained to the kids is I explain glycemic index and what happens to their blood sugar. And when their blood sugar goes up, it comes down, and then we're hungry again. And they've probably seen the commercials called hangry, calling
Right.
it hangry. And I said, but if you reach for what they're advertising on the commercials, you're going to have the same process happen. Your blood sugar will go back up, but then it will come down. And so this is what we're trying to avoid by keeping our blood sugar nice and steady. And so the kids actually do get it. Throughout the semester, we talk about glycemic index. We talk about the ability to focus and concentrate. And don't you just want to get your schoolwork done? Like 15 minutes of schoolwork shouldn't take 2 hours. But if
my goodness. I mean, you're speaking to me here, because that's what my son used to be when he was eating the box mac and cheese and stuff like that. Buddy, sit down, read your book, do this, ooh, it's 2 hours later. How many times have you read the page? 50. You know what's on the page? I have no clue, Pop.
yes,
I'm bouncing off the wall. Come on, let's go outside. Let's go shoot some pucks. Let's go shoot some baskets. Let's burn this off. Then he would settle down. And I think that we're finally going to say it. We started off just talking, but we want to raise smarter kids by doing all of this stuff, right?
yes. And when they understand, when you can appeal to them and say, have you ever had that time when you just read the same page over and over again? Or you sat down to do your homework and 2 hours later, you just couldn't get it done? How many of you have ever cried over your homework because it's just too hard that night to do it? Believe it or not, that has a lot to do with what you've eaten throughout the day.
Of course it does.
I explain their blood sugar, and I explain the high carbohydrates and the highly processed foods and the amount of sugar and what that does to them. And when they understand that, then they're like, oh, see, these are the conversations that I say, this isn't just about cooking class. We need to have conversations with our kids so they can make intelligent decisions.
Sure.
If we want them to become independent, personally responsible, and
there you go.
And we want them to run the world. I mean, come on, in 20 years, I'm going to be too old to do this. And they're going to be running the world.
No,
so
we're not going to be. We're not going to be.
I tell them, I say, you guys need to remember Miss Lisa in 20 years. And so when you're, establishing the, policies of the world, when you're the world leaders, you need to be thinking clearly.
Well, it's true, because I do remember in high school, just before lunch, I was bouncing off the walls. I would look at the clock. I remember in biology class, we had it just before lunch. Wow, that's a long time ago. And I'm looking at the clock, then you look at it like, 30 seconds later, and you think it's like an hour. It's like, oh, good, class is over. I need to eat, and then, no, it's only 30 seconds. And you're like, oh my gosh, you're like, this is not great. I'm not taking notes. I'm not listening, Lisa. I'm listening. I'm not listening. I got notes. I got half notes. I'm looking at my buddy next to me. I need the notes. He's like, yeah, I'll give you the notes. He goes, why don't you take your own notes? I'm like, I'm bouncing, baby. This is just out of control, because my breakfast at that point in time was a sugary cereal, right? And then I was, you feel good for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it hits you. And then for lunch, of course, you had the white bread. You had the 2 sandwiches. I mean, you're playing football, basketball, you're burning, energy. I have 3 sandwiches, I would have 3 of them, and you have the white bread. Then there was chips, or there was pretzels. Then you had the soda that they put into your lunchbox there. Remember lunch boxes?
Yeah.
Right. And then there was like little cut up things with the cheese or whatever the case may be. I don't know. you know, and it became a situation where it was unhealthy, because then at one point in time after lunch, when I crashed, I was like, oh my gosh, we have a game today. I got to go to practice today. I'm 15, 16. I'm walking to practice and I'm grabbing a cup of coffee, you know, to jolt myself. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
You know, because you put sugar in it. You know, it was like an energy drink for me and others. Crazy.
Well, you know, I started a couple of videos on YouTube, and I have a whole series planned. And the purpose of what I'm recording now, of course, I'm still recording cooking classes, and I'm still, you know, coaching people occasionally, but I am looking to leave a breadcrumb trail for people to be able to follow or connect the dots, to say, how did we get here? How did this happen? Because there's so much cognitive dissonance. And I understand that not everyone's psyche is, you know, able to handle the truth. There's that famous line in the movie, right? You can't handle the truth. I understand that now. I understand that line.
You want the truth? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. Yes, I can see that scene in my head. Because anyway, I can't say that word.
I understand.
It's a potty mouth word that they said at that point in time. All right, I'm done with that. All right.
Yes. And so what I started putting together is some of the things that have happened to get us to where we are, because most people are in denial that we only have 50 to 60 harvests left on this planet. Most people have no concept that our bees are dying, and nor do they care, because they're in survival mode and they got a job and they got a family to feed, except that your child will not eat in the second half of their lifetime if we don't fix these very critical issues. We have basically a monopoly when it comes to our food system. So hello, people, you need to wake up. There's 36,000 brands found in your grocery store that are held by 10 companies, 10 worldwide, that's it. 10 companies, it rolls up to 10, and those 10 are basically held by two financial institutions, BlackRock and Vanguard, and they're the same ones that control the pharmaceuticals and the agricultural chemicals. So what is your food? The food in the grocery store is the same chemicals that are put in the pharmaceuticals and the agricultural chemicals. And when really those companies, we hired them for a return on Wall Street. When you buy those brands, chances are, if you look at your 401k or you look at your investments, your mutual funds, you've invested in those companies and you're expecting a return from those 36,000 brands held by those 10 companies. And so you hired them to give you a return on Wall Street. You didn't hire them for the health of your family.
Right.
So they're going to use the cheapest raw materials possible to give you a bigger return. And if you look, what those CEOs are probably making, what, $20-30 million a year, you know, they got a lot of overhead costs that they got to cover with their executives. So they're not concerned about your child bouncing off the walls or having behavioral issues. And so then I hear from my clients, I don't know what happened to my grandkids. I mean, my kids were well behaved, but my grandkids, they are, I know it's this timeout generation. It's because they weren't disciplined properly. Well, that's a whole nother topic that I'm not prepared to.
That's a whole nother topic.
Because I don't know, I don't have enough data on that. What I do have data on is that in this generation, we have over 200 chemicals found in cord blood. We have more chemicals in use. We're feeding them food dyes and glyphosate is killing off the microbiome. We know there's a gut-brain connection. If we look at GAPS and the work of Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride, we know that ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia, even schizophrenia, gut-brain connection, this is gut health, and we know that the food is deteriorating our gut health. So there is so much denial out there, and it's not my job to convince everybody. I do feel that I'm called to put the educational materials together so that as people kind of wake up to the truth, they can follow the breadcrumbs or connect the dots and say, how did we get here?
How did we get here? And that's where it is almost done. We have 2 minutes left, just to let you know, Lisa. How did we get here will be the topic of our next month's conversation. Got to write that down for me. How
Okay.
did we get here?
How did we get here? Yes.
That's going to be the topic for next month's conversation, because then you'll have your cooking class ready to go. You'll have, you have the 4-part docuseries that you can get. Then there's a 3-day live stream cooking class, right? And
Yes.
we're gonna discuss that, and how did we get here, and how do we get out of there?
Yes,
what-
that is a big part of what I'm teaching, is the solutions. The solutions, actually, we hold the solutions in our hands, and our kids can be the solution. We just have to give them the information, and then give them, the tools, and empower them.
I just threw my pen because I wrote that down. That's going to the show notes. I like that a lot.
You talk with your hands? Because I talk with my hands, and I throw my pen often.
I throw my pen at my son. That's no, I don't do that. Yes, I do talk with my hands. Somebody sent me something early this morning about Italians, and they're just going like this, and the other person's going like this. They understand there's no words coming out. But Lisa, thank you very much for being on again. This was incredibly awesome. This was great. And we are going to continue on with this conversation next month, and we will figure this out, and we will get that up and going. So, Lisa, I think this is going to be something we're going to be talking like this periodically, because I find this interesting and fascinating.
I would love that. I love talking with you. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
same here. So, Lisa, thank you very much for being on today. It is a pleasure to have you on. I want to thank everybody for listening in to our podcast today. Share this with family, friends, co-workers, neighbors, everybody, grandmas, grandpas, aunts and uncles, everybody, because a lot of truth bombs were dropped today. So Lisa, thank you very much. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you the next time. Take care.